Yeah, so how did I first get into Pee Wee Herman? So, I just met someone the other day who worked on the show, who asked me the same question and would not believe that I was actually a Playhouse baby, born in 1986, and said, how is that even possible? Really, one of my earliest memories in life is being in a crib, watching Pee Wee Herman. I don't know if that's a real or fabricated memory, but it's a memory I have, and I'm sticking to it. When I was younger, my grandfather had this VCR and would videotape VCR. I know it's this thing that plays these big boxes and has movies embedded on them. He would tape anything that he was remotely interested in off of HBO, which now would get him slapped with a lawsuit from Metallica or something like that. But back in that day, it was okay. And he would literally get home and just put in these Pee Wee Herman tapes, and I would watch because I was in a crib and had no choice. And for a long period of time, that was my favorite thing to watch. I had a Pee Wee Herman plush action figure that is not that one, but it's one like that that went with me lots of places, and had toys, and there's really adorably annoying home video of me imitating Pee Wee Herman and doing all that sort of stuff when I was a kid. And it was always something that was very interesting to me. In fact, I think the first movie I was taken to was Big Top Pee Wee. My mom will fact check that, but I think it was Big Top Pee Wee was the first movie I ever went to. I slept through pretty much the entire thing because I was just a wee one. And in fact, even now when I watch it sometimes, I still kind of doze off a little bit at some part. But Pee Wee Herman was a big part of my childhood. And the thing that's, for me, when you're a kid, you don't understand why things don't happen, right? You don't understand, like, why Christmas goes away. You don't understand all those sorts of things. But I never really understood, being a 5-year-old or whatever, why the show was no longer on television, why the character was gone, why there weren't toys anymore. It was just kind of here today, gone tomorrow. And it's been really cool for me to kind of see him back in that suit and doing stuff. It's been really interesting. Yes? You had a question?
Yeah, I was going to ask that question. But also, how do you get the name? How do you come up with that name? Did you ever ask him that Pee Wee Herman? Does Herman have some significance or anything?
Well, according to Paul Rubens, Pee Wee is from a brand of harmonica that he used to have when he was a kid. Pee Wee brand harmonicas, and Herman was the name of a really annoying kid that was a classmate of his when he lived in Sarasota. So he took that Pee Wee and added it with the Herman, and that's how he got Pee Wee Herman. And the funny thing about that is that he wanted people to believe that Pee Wee Herman was a real person. If you look at the credits of his project, it always says Pee Wee Herman as himself. The idea was that it was almost an Andy Kaufman-esque high-performance art. And he said that Pee Wee Herman was a great name because it sounds like something no one would ever make up. So that was where that came from. Yes?
I wonder where you got some of this memorabilia, the chair and him, and the color form.
Yeah. Well, next season I'm actually going to be on TLC's Hoarders. But I got lots of this stuff just kind of over the years. To be honest with you, some of this stuff is really from eBay. I had an amazing estate sale find this weekend where the color forms are from. I had the color forms as a kid, though, so I have those at home. The chair I have from when I was a kid. The books I wrote. The playbills. The playbills are from the actual show, but a lot of it was just kind of accumulated over the years. You can find a lot of this stuff really easily on eBay. Not that expensive either. Yes?
Comment. My son is very much into the movies.
Mm-hmm.
So when I told him I was coming here tonight, he said, there's something I want to make sure you know. That a guy named John Singleton was on the production staff of these shows, and he went on to write the screenplay for Boys in the Hood.
Yes. Thank you for bringing that up. That's a great, one of the things that's really interesting about the show are the people that are kind of Playhouse alumni. You saw Essa Merkerson, who was on Law & Order for a very long time, Broadway actress Lawrence Fishburne, who was Larry at the time, and John Singleton was security on the set. The set was a closed set, and John Singleton, during downtime, handed Larry Fishburne a script for Boys in the Hood, and that's how that deal ended up being brokered. It ended up being brokered literally on the set of Pee-wee's Playhouse. Rob Zombie, the musician Rob Zombie, was the production assistant on the show also. So a lot of really interesting people came out of the show. The people that did Wallace and Gromit animated the Penny cartoons on the show. I spoke to them, and that was really interesting. So, yeah, thank you for bringing that up. Yes?
Caseen, you mentioned before Pee-wee was here today, gone tomorrow.
Yes.
It reminds me of like a modern-day example of that would be, Charlie Sheen had a public meltdown, and you saw people in the media who were working on the set of 2.5 Men, criticizing him, he's selfish, he's this, that, and the other thing. A lot of people had jobs that everybody was, their fortunes were tied to Paul Rubens. During your interviews or anything, did you hear anybody speak ill? Were people understanding? What kind of things did you hear?
Well, that's a really great thing to bring up. The thing that's important to kind of remember and what gets misremembered is that the show was actually done. By the time Paul Rubens was arrested for indecent exposure in 1991, the show was done. They had wrapped production. In fact, they had wrapped production in January, I want to say, of 1990. They had produced 2 seasons worth of episodes. And then were holding them, and Paul Rubens grew out his hair, and he had, let himself go in that respect. So there are a lot of people that I reached out to, Lynn Stewart, Lawrence Fishburne, Esapatha Murkerson, John Paragon, who plays John B. the Genie, who declined to speak to me, and declined to speak to me because they are still working with or would like to work with Paul. Again, I assume that they would have very positive things to say about him. No one that I spoke to had negative things to say about him tethered to his arrest. There were people, Paul Rubens was a 20-something when he started doing Pee Wee Herman. Made a lot of friends, made a lot of enemies, in terms of making his way to the top. A lot of people rightfully and wrongfully feel that they were, financially taken advantage of or creatively taken advantage of, that they had contributed to the show in some way and had never gotten recognition for it. Hundreds of people worked on this show, worked on the films. There's really only one name that you remember, and that takes a toll on people. So there were people that certainly had negative things to say about him. It was really more negative things to say about him, I guess, as a friend than it was about anything that he did publicly. Yes?
All right, so I'm a kid, and so I don't exactly know what the whole why he disappeared thing. I mean,
Yes.
Yeah. So what is that? Because I was born in '93, so I don't know. I have no idea what's going on here.
Okay. So, all right. So, I guess in some households this might actually count as the talk. I guess, right? What ended up happening? All right. So Paul Rubens has 2 movies. He has 5 seasons of a kids show. He's vacationing, visiting his family in Sarasota. He goes to an adult movie theater, and he is charged with indecent exposure. And if you don't know what that means, then you need to Google it, but don't do the images. And you can find out what that means. But he was arrested. Several other people were also arrested, and there's a lot of kind of speculation that the only reason why he was even identified is because to try and get out of it, he identified himself as Pee Wee Herman. He said, I'm Pee Wee Herman, can I do some charity work for the Sarasota Police Department, and, can we kind of push this aside? And they said no, because, they're police. And that's what ended up happening. It was kind of a national joke for a long time. And what's funny is, I was speaking with someone right before the show, and the talk today, and what happened in 1991 is difficult to comprehend if you weren't there, because we don't have celebrity scandal like that to that level really anymore. I mean, we have Charlie Sheen, we have Lindsay Lohan, we have Britney Spears, we have all these people that have had scandal in recent years, and they release a statement, they disappear for a couple of months, and they bounce back, and they sell lots of CDs, and Charlie Sheen had that tour where he, was acting a fool and doing all these sorts of things. I don't know if it was because Pee Wee Herman was a children's host, or maybe because he was, he didn't really attack it in the way that people attack it nowadays, but the media was able to kind of write that story for him, and for a very long period of time, Paul Rubin did kind of some work as himself, but the character was gone for about 15 years. Yes?
In the book, how much do you cover that period when he was himself? Do you cover the You Don't Know Jack?
I do not cover You Don't Know Jack. You Don't Know Jack was an amazingly unsuccessful game show that Paul Rubens hosted for 6 riveting episodes. You can watch all 6 episodes on YouTube, based on the computer game. The book, the last chapter of the book does cover kind of post the incident, but he did a film with Johnny Depp called Blow. He did Murphy Brown, where he was nominated for an Emmy. And there's lots of things that are touched on in the book, but You Don't Know Jack didn't make the cut, unfortunately. Yes.
Did you ever have to deal with writer's block, and what did you do to combat it?
I did have to deal with writer's block, and when I, to combat it, I pulled out my contract that said I had a certain deadline. The thing that's really important to point out is that this book was contracted before it was written. When you write a novel or fiction, even I think children's books to an extent, you write the book and then you give someone a complete book and then they say, I want it or I don't want it. This book, I wrote a proposal, I wrote a chapter of the book, which is surprisingly close to what I sent over 2 years ago. It wasn't really edited too much. And then I had to write a book, and I had I think a year or close to a year to write it. So I spent a lot of time last summer declining invitations to go out and writing. And after you write, then they go back to you, and they you keep tossing it back and forth with rewrites. Beyond the ones that I had to do by myself for the first draft, there were lots of rewrites back and forth with my editor, who's a very smart person. She's very, very smart. She made the book very good. Okay, so I got the hand signal that we are all done. Thank you guys so much. If you want to chat, I'm here in a couple minutes, but thank you so much. The book is inside Pee Wee's Playhouse. There are flyers with information. It's on Amazon now, and it will be out November 1st. Okay, thank you so much.